Call to order the work session. This work session is to discuss
Revenue.
revenue. Thank you. Alternatives. Make sure that your microphones are turned on when you're speaking and that you're within 6 inches of it. It's important that we capture all the dialogue for record. So I will turn it over to Nancy Brewer.
Thank you. And I'm going to say, stop me as I go if you have questions or don't understand or whatever. I realized going back through this, thinking about today, that I didn't put maybe some important things into the staff report just as overarching ideas for you to have in the back of your brains. Raising revenue is difficult, it's challenging, it's a tax, it is the people locally paying it, and so there is a fair amount of anxiety that comes around discussing revenue alternatives, but it is part of the conversation that we realistically need to have in terms of talking about long-term fiscal sustainability for the city. And at the budget committee where we talked about this year spending $1.2 million more than we are bringing in revenue for current services, and our 5-year projections continuing that trend. We're eating through our fund balance, and we'll need to take a course of action sometime over the next year or two to get to a place where we are balanced, and that can be completely done through budget cuts. It can be completely done through seeking new revenue. It can be done through a balance of those two things. But continuing on the path that we are and doing nothing is probably not suitable. So we have some time to work through this in a thoughtful way. I will tell you that for my career, I have always wished somebody else would come and bring money to the table. And we see things like federal and state grants. I think it's important to remember that those resources have a lot of strings attached to them, are used for very specific kinds of things. So it's not, here's money every year to pay a police officer. It's, here's some money to pay a police officer for 3 years, and you have to guarantee you're going to keep that a new additional position for another 5 years after that and pay full ride. And the amount of money that's coming is not enough to pay for that officer for even 3 years. So those kinds of grants are out there, but long-term sustainable, no. Most often those are for capital projects for a very specific purpose, not for ongoing costs. So this is really talking about trying to find resources for ongoing funding for the services that we have. You all know from the budget, we also did not include funding for the jail. Cost estimate for that is $750,000. So if we wanted to open the jail and we're looking at spending $1.2 million more than we're bringing in, we're really talking about a $2 million gap here to be addressed in some method. And so this is a discussion early on about some revenue alternatives. As we go through this, some of them would need a lot more work to come up with how to structure something if you wanted to go that way. But talking with the mayor, he thought we needed to start here and give some time to think about it and, you know, frankly, get feedback from your neighborhoods, your communities about where people stand on some of these issues. And we'll come back in the fall then and start talking about the service side and what would be involved there. I do note in the report, our permanent property tax rate was set in 1997. It's constitutionally set. It cannot change. It has not changed. It will not change. To make any kind of permanent increase in that would require a constitutional amendment. And you kind of think about how that goes with now you have a vote of the people that's, would you let cities raise their permanent tax rate, and that becomes you want to tax yourselves more, and it's pretty easy to vote no on that. So that's a hard lift. And thus far, though, the League of Oregon Cities has been at the legislature every year since 1997 asking to have some kind of relief, some kind of revenue-raising alternative at the local level. They have not been willing to put that out to the voters. So the League does have that as a high priority, but it's not moved. The second side of that is it's a tax rate that's permanently set times assessed value Assessed value was knocked back in 1997 to basically 1994 levels. I think less 10%, something like that. And then that's grown only 3% a year since then. And property coming onto the tax rolls comes on at the average of what's called the change property ratio. So for residential property in Lynn County, a new house comes on the tax rolls at 48% of the real market value. So if you buy a house for $350,000, you will have an assessed value set at 168. That is just the way the law works. I will say that since 1997, that change property ratio has trended down across the state. So it maybe used to be 75%, maybe then 60%, now it's at 48, and it's continuing to go down. What's not included in here is a lot of discussion about how that's really become very inequitable property to property, but that's a different story. So we'll leave that for another day if you want to go there. And then as we kind of worked through what some of the alternatives are, really trying to look at something that brings in significant revenue. I am not opposed to nickels and dimes. I pick up pennies in parking lots, but a $2 million issue needs $500,000 or more revenue hits if we were going to go that direction. And so that's really what I focused on. I tried to provide the same basic outline of information on each of these alternatives, and I'll tell you that there are lots of other ideas and communities that use something that's not on this list. Some communities would have may have a revenue alternative that is an admissions tax, and that may work well if you are in a place where you've got, you know, Auburn playing football and you charge an admissions tax on ticket sales in the football stadium, and that can produce a whole lot of money. Those are not things that I thought as being viable for significant revenue production here, so I did not include that as a possibility. So starting with a local option levy, this is a property tax levy. Voters are asked to approve it. Hi, come on in. Oh, sorry. Nope. Sorry. Don't worry. Hope you're okay.
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 Yeah, thanks. Sorry. Continue.
That's all right. So a local option levy, which is different than a bond levy, this is to raise money for operating costs. It can range in time period from 1 to 5 years. It can't be for longer than 5 years. At the end, you either let it expire and you don't have the revenue anymore, or you revote on it and you move forward. Elections can be March, August, May, and November. But it's important to know that if you go in March or August, you have to get double majority. So you have to have 50% plus one turnout and 50% plus one vote yes. That's generally at this point considered a really high hurdle and hard to reach. So most people are going to be 50% of the registered voters have to vote.
Okay.
And then of that, 50% plus one have to vote yes. And generally it's the getting 50% plus one of registered voters to turn out on a ballot that doesn't have a president, a senator, a representative on it, right? That brings people out to vote. So you end up with a much harder campaign just to get people to the ballot box. And so that really puts you at a May or November as the likely dates. March, May, August of 2023, those dates are all passed. That would result in revenue this fall. So the best you would be looking at would be something that would be coming in 2024 at this point. Again, 5 years. The revenue that gets produced is going to depend on the tax rate that you set. So ask Brandon to look at what it would take to raise $500,000. It would be a rate of about 42 cents. To get more into that, we would need to pull data and look at what compression losses would be. If you recall, compression is what happens when you are paying more than $10 per thousand of assessed value for non-education taxing districts. And you got to look at overlapping and all the rest of that. there's not a really solid direct link in terms of who pays. It's not like if you use less water, you pay a lower water bill. If you use a lot of water, you pay more. Instead, it's a tax rate. Everybody pays it, whether they use the service or not. In terms of use of funds, the limits are really just on the ballot language that the council would write to send to voters. And that tends to come down to a hard policy question and discussion on the part of the council. So for example, you could go out with a levy that would fund the library. And it would fund anything in the library. And then the question is, do you think people would vote for funding for the library? Alternatively, you could go for a levy to fund library materials. And you get $100,000 a year to buy library materials, but because the rest of the budget is failing, you're closing the library several days a week. You have a great materials collection, but you're not ever open. So those are some things that you have to think about as you ponder putting a ballot initiative out, how you would structure that. Conventional wisdom is like a broad, just give us money for city services tends not to fare well. But focusing that revenue source on a particular service area tends to have better options at the ballot box, tends to get voted on. There are a lot of communities around that have local option levies: Albany, Sweet Home, Lynn County Sheriff, Benton County, Corvallis. It's a pretty common way for communities to raise money. I want to say Sweet Home has had a local option levy since, I think, 1998, every year, two, I think, one for police, one for library. They have renewed them every 5 years since they started. Administration is pretty easy. It's done by the county assessor and the county finance department. They simply put it on everybody's tax bill. They collect the money and turn it over with all the other property tax issues. Some unique issues: it is a campaign at the ballot box. Staff can give you all kinds of information, but once that ballot measure is certified and placed on the ballot, what staff can do about that becomes a pretty small universe of factual information generally handed out on private personal time. So I'll take a day of vacation and go talk to Rotary about it. The campaign for support is going to fall to the city council and likely a political action committee of some kind, to yard signs and letters to people, vote yes kinds of conversations. And then it's also important to note, generally speaking, having more than one local option levy on a ballot can cause people to vote for one or the other, but not both. And so you end up with both issues failing because you don't get enough votes for either one. And so important to note that the Fire Protection District is considering a May 2024 local option levy, which would put our next most likely time going for November of 2024. So it's just something to have in the back pocket. One of the advantages for that is you have more time to build that political bench in terms of a political action committee. So I'm going to stop and see if there are any questions on a local option levy. Now, I'm seeing none. So let's move on to a local income or payroll
I
tax.
actually did have
Yeah, okay.
one question. So you said if we wanted to take this course of action, then it'd be November of 24?
That would be the most likely.
We couldn't do it in March?
We could do March, but you're going to have to get 50% of the voters, of the registered voters, to turn out.
Yeah, okay.
And that's the challenge, right? We don't, I have not looked at Lynn County or Lebanon election turnout, but I don't think that we get much over 50% on a presidential election. So when the only thing out is vote to tax yourselves,
Yeah,
that gets pretty hard to do.
understood.
On the last presidential, it was 48%.
What did Sweet Home, you said for police and library?
Police and library.
Okay. Is that similar for the other cities that you mentioned?
So Corvallis is Parks and Library, Benton County is Sheriff, Lynn County is Sheriff, Albany is Police and Fire, I think. I think that's what Albany's is. Philomath doesn't have one right now. Those are the ones I know off the top of my head. There are lots of cities around that have a local option levy.
And those have been pretty successful over the years?
They tend to be, yes. Again, there are political challenges. So if you were to go out for a local option levy and say, this will fund the library, and it fails, the question becomes, what will you not fund? Will you not fund the library? And if the decision is, well, if this ballot measure to vote to fund the library fails, we will not fund parks, that's a political campaign that's over, right? Because now you weren't being honest about it. So you have to think pretty deeply about both, we're getting money for something, and if it fails, what happens if it fails? What are we going to do?
If our case, and for me, if we used it to open the jail,
Mhm.
we're not losing anything if it doesn't pass, right?
That's
What I
correct.
don't really picture is what happens if it goes 5 years and then all of a sudden it says, oh, it doesn't pass this time.
Then you
You'd
close
shut
the
the jail
jail
down
at that
again.
point.
Yeah, and I think that's a risk all of the people that have these local or these operating levies, like the sheriff's office I know has one all the time, and that's the risk you run. So my question would be, do these cities also have, I mean, we have bonds on our city taxes, of course, for the Justice Center and the library. Do they have bonds in addition to local option levies for them?
Some of them do, yes. They are two different but similar things. So they're both property taxes. The bonds you vote on once, and generally then you're assessing the taxes for the 20-year term that you have the bonds outstanding. Those taxes are outside of Measure 47 and Measure 5 limitations. So you can have, the district can be in compression and losing operating revenue, but the bonds are on top of that $10 per thousand value. With the local option levy, you are funding annual operations, and so at that point, they do require you to go back every 5 years. I think if you recall the last Lynn County Sheriff's levy, they went out early. I want to say in year 4 of their 5-year levy, and the first time they went out, it failed. And then they had to go out to the voters again and had to have a much harder push then to get enough yes votes to continue to operate. And that revenue does provide a substantial amount of funding for the Lynn County Sheriff's Office. And it is a challenge. I will tell you that from an operations perspective, funding an operation on 5-year increments is a really hard way to manage, because you end up with people saying, do I want to take this job if the levy fails next year? And you have to cut the jail or the library or whatever, right? That becomes very much part of the conversation, and it becomes a part of the operation of that organization. Then is every kind of 4 or 5 years, you're ramping up, preparing for another election, another renewal of that levy. It doesn't really matter what the operating costs being supported are. You're going to be in that same place.
My question was really just because, I know when I get my tax bill right now, of course, we have the city's, the general tax, right? And then, of course, there's the operating levies or the bond.
Urban renewal districts?
There's the 2 bond ones on there. Or maybe it's one bond and
We
then there's
have-
one for the,
We have a bond, and the school district has a bond.
okay. Yeah, it's just thinking through it, how many times are we going to appear on that tax statement is just my, thing. Like,
Well,
just what does that look
Since
like,
I'm not
right?
afraid to be the dummy, what, a bond versus this, what's,
So
Construction.
a bond is permission to borrow money and take time to pay it back. And a bond must be spent on capital. So you're building a building. Some communities will issue bonds, for example, to buy a fire truck or to buy a new fleet of police vehicles. And
you don't get a bond to keep the jail open.
you can't do that. A bond cannot pay for operating
get
costs. So the operating has to come out of that local option levy if you're going to do property tax.
The only bond that we really would consider would be for the new city hall.
We could consider that, yes. And then you're at, will voters approve
Yeah.
debt service for that?
They won't.
I think that's a hard sell.
Yeah.
Yep.
There are not a lot of communities where that can occur. So Okay, so local income or payroll tax, I think y'all know what an income tax is. Payroll tax is the equivalent of Social Security. You pay some and the employer pays some. You can implement that by a simple passage of an ordinance, or you can choose to refer that question to the voters. If you pass an ordinance, it's subject to the referral process, so you could have citizens run an initiative asking people to vote on it. That's always an option. Once it's established, though, it would be permanent. It would not require 5-year renewals unless it's structured that way. And I'll come back to that in a second. At this point, I don't think we can come up with revenue projections. We don't have enough data to know how much money is earned in Lebanon by people who don't live here. And we don't know how much money is earned by Lebanites who don't work here. So we would end up, if we were going to pursue that, needing to work with the Department of Revenue to try and pull more data. But I'm throwing it out here because frankly, it's getting a whole lot of media in the state right now as Salem pursues a payroll tax, which I will note they voted on yesterday, day before, and passed on a 5-4 vote. A lot of discussion about that.
That was like 68, it was like $50 or $60 a month, I think.
No, yeah, it's like
over
a buck.
certain
They said
income
on average,
threshold.
I think it was $1.40 a day or something like that for the average. And I think they exempted minimum wage jobs. I will note they structured that that comes back to voters in like 7 years. So voters can either agree to continue it or stop it at that point. But they wanted to have time to see if it was funding the services people wanted and are asking for. Like everything else, the use of those funds would depend on what the council said. So have a local income tax for the jail, local income tax for the entire police department, whatever that was you wanted to structure. In terms of in the state, Multnomah County has an income tax, Eugene has one, and now Salem is working on implementing. I believe it goes into effect in 2025. They're going to spend 2024.
Nancy, can you explain to me where the funnel, how does that, is that collected any Lebanon business, no matter if you live in Lebanon or not?
So the way that Salem has structured it and Eugene both is it's if you work there. So a lot of the chatter, a lot of the testimony in Salem council meetings was, I work here, but I don't live here, so this is taxation without representation. I heard an interview with the mayor of Salem today, and he said, you don't vote on gas tax, and when you go to Washington, you didn't vote on the sales tax. So I think that's part of the discussion that's happening around that. But it is a way to capture that influx of people that are coming into town to work there, but don't live there and don't pay property taxes.
Do we have enough data to know how that affects businesses wanting to come to you?
We don't. And as I know, there are no, I mean, right, this is Portland, Eugene, and Salem. These are the 3 biggest cities in the state. There are no cities our size that are doing this. So I put it out here because it is a viable alternative. It would take some time to get it worked through in terms of what an estimate would be, what the cost would be to individual taxpayers based on how much you're trying to raise, and all the rest of it.
Cost of running that program would be as well?
So we would more likely than not contract with the Department of Revenue to collect that for us because they have the collection mechanisms in place and there would be a cost.
Yeah.
We have a cost with them now to collect our lodging tax and our marijuana tax, but it's like 0.004% or something of what they collect. There's a programming fee you pay up front. That would all have to be worked through. If you wanted to pursue that, then we would start talking to Department of Revenue about how that might work. But it's viable. It would raise significant revenue if it was set that way. But, we would be unique among small cities. Let's go first. So I do note we could have local sales tax. I've never found anything in state law that says you can't. Oregonians hate the sales tax. And the biggest drawback here is there is no collection mechanism, no administrative mechanism. Wherever a sales tax exists, there's a state and there's a local. State collects it everybody's, cash registers are programmed for it. So there would be a lot of administrative work. Because of that, there's not a lot of data here for you. It's just on the list because it could happen. A restaurant or meal tax, basically it's a sales tax on food purchased at a restaurant. You could do it by ordinance, but you could also send it to voters if you wanted to do that. It's generally pretty simple to program the cash register, the point of sale machine in restaurants to collect the money. We would have an administrative cost to collect, reconcile that, have people remit it to us. Could be permanent, or it could be for a temporary time period if the council wanted to go there. Like some of the others, the use of the money would depend upon what the council decided. I'll note the other users in the state right now, Cannon Beach, Yachats, and Ashland, big tourist communities, and part of what they're trying to do is capture the costs that a community of 20,000 has when they have 50,000 visitors on a routine summer day. And so you have to size up, your road infrastructure, your police infrastructure, your fire, your water and wastewater for way more than the 20,000 permanent residents should potentially have to pay for. So that's a way that you can capture some of that funding to fund those services that are being demanded. Again, I'm not seeing that as really viable in Lebanon. We don't have a huge tourist base. And so what we would end up doing is it would more likely than not be a tax on the people in town who are going to restaurants. So, but other people are using it, so I thought I'd throw it on the list. The fee on the utility bill is a viable option. There are a lot of other communities that have done this, and some have had fees on the utility bills for 20 or more years. I want to say Medford had parks and fire vehicles 20 plus years ago, something like that. You can do it by an ordinance and then a resolution setting the fee, just like we do with the utilities. You can do annual reviews. It can be permanent. It can be short-term. You can set that fee in a variety of ways. It can just be anybody who's got a utility account. It can be a rate that ramps up with meter size, so larger entities pay more on it. The restriction on funds would be based on what the council said when you created the fee. So you want to create that fee and fund parks. You want to create that fee and fund a jail. That's how you would define it, and that's how the revenue would be used. I will note Corvallis has 7 fees for specific purposes. Salem has a single fee right now, $8.93, but they are discussing raising that to $14.43. Their gap between their annual spend and revenue is about $15 million. So that's why they're looking at both the payroll tax and significant fee increases. Philomath has a street utility fee. Sherwood has 3 fees on their utility bill. This is becoming much more common across the state because it's a revenue source that the local government can control. That said, it's on everybody's utility account, and we know that. We hear about people who are unhappy with their monthly utility bills and the amount that costs, and it becomes another cost on that bill. I think that's in recognition that really all of these revenue sources come down to the people in Lebanon paying for services in Lebanon. And again, nobody is coming in from the state saying, here is $1 million a year to spend on whatever you wish to spend it on, and it's permanent and it will be here forever, and go and have fun with the money. That simply is not, that's not going to happen. And so it falls to us to figure out what we want to do in terms of our community. So those are the big ones that I have on the list. Again, I'm not asking for any action. I'm really asking for feedback, for questions that you might have, and for you to ponder this as we continue to work through what will be kind of the next set of discussions, which are what are the services that are currently being funded, and how would we look at if we were going to manage this through just through budget cuts or through a combination? What would that look like in terms of working through? So
Nancy, if we put a fee on a utility bill, does that have to have a string attached as far as what we're going to use it for?
It does not. It can be a general service fee. I think that's what Lebanon has. I think Albany has a general service fee on their bill maybe now. And so it just goes into the general fund and is available and funds all of the operations. So, could you have
My point of view right now, there are two things we need: the jail and our street repair. Those are the two major things that I see. And a utility bill fee would make sense to the common person on the street.
right. So I don't, this is really focused on general fund, but I'll tell you that there are a whole lot of communities that are doing a street fee on the utility bill and really moving the street system more to a utility enterprise where
Really
they
is.
are raising those fees. And in large part, it's because what we have right now for street funding is coming out of the gas tax and vehicle registrations. Well, more electric vehicles, better fuel efficiency, gas tax money is not growing significantly. And it's not enough money to attend to the residential streets that are in high need in the community. We tend to use that money and focus it on collectors and arterials where you have a lot of traffic. And so the neighborhood street tends to get short shrift. And so, yeah, I think a street fee could be placed on the bill if you wanted to go that direction. It does give you the option over time to continue to raise that and do more work. And certainly as we see costs go up, it's a way to keep up with inflation and try and continue to address that. So
Our utility bills are already high. And
they are already high.
a lot of people are complaining. So if we'd add something to that, I don't know.
Well, we're
It's-
really talking about the water bill, right? There's no other city utility. We're talking about, you put $10 on the water bill to raise $775,000, right?
Right.
No magic there.
Yeah. So that's, that's the universe that we're kind of working in is nobody's going to like a property tax bill. No one is going to like an income tax or a payroll tax. No one's going to like a fee on the utility bill. But if you're going to look for revenue, that's really the places to go. You go,
Okay, I'm confused, which is not a surprise to anybody.
okay.
When this whole thing came up, I thought we were focusing on the jail. And now we're throwing in every other fund that we have. Are we trying to fix the jail or are we trying to fix $1.2 million shortfall? Because you're not going to get 1.2 million off of a utility tax or what have you. So just kind of wondering where we're going with this.
So for me, these two things wrap together. Because here's the deal, right? You can go for jail funding and now you have the jail, you still have the $1.2 million that you have to figure out what you're going to do. And generally speaking, you're going to get one bite at the apple on a revenue.
Yeah.
So that means you're dealing with cutting the 1.2 million out of the budget and the services that we're currently providing. That's a council decision. If that's the direction you want to go, that's the direction you go. And so all I'm doing at this point is bringing in information about alternatives. And if the council just wants to say, look, we want a revenue alternative to raise $775,000 a year, we can work, if you want to just do a fee on every utility account in town, we can work on an ordinance to create that and bring it in at, I don't know, a September or October council meeting, set a rate, start bringing money in the next month, and do a budget amendment on an unexpected revenue, create the appropriations, and start working to hire the jail. That, it could be done that quickly.
Well, I know
Okay?
it could. I just wanted to,
And-
I'm just trying to figure out what our focus really is, because when this was first brought up, it was all about the jail. And now it's not all about the jail, it's about everything. And I think before we start looking to backfill $1.2 million in the budget, I would want to open the budget back up and re-examine it in a lot more detail and in more than a 1 week time frame that we had to look at it. A lot of that stuff got collapsed, so you don't know where those dollars are going like we used to in the past. And before we go for something like that, I think we need to revisit the budget in much more detail. If we're just talking about the jail, that's a different story. But
My recollection when we closed the jail discussion was that we were going to have a downfall. And that was the only thing that immediately that we could save some money.
well, yeah.
We didn't
had
have the
we had-
staffing.
Yeah, we didn't have the staffing. We
Right.
couldn't afford the staffing
Right.
with this budget. So are we gonna, I mean, we can walk and chew bubble gum at the same time.
Mhm.
So I think the jail is a separate issue from the budget shortfall. And to really examine the budget shortfall, we need to open it back up and take a much closer in-depth look at that budget.
I agree with that, but my personal opinion is that the jail not being open is part of our budget shortfall.
Mhm.
I mean, you might say it's a 1.2 million that we're short. We're short 2 million to me right now, and I'm going to keep thinking that way. So I agree completely. We need to, I'm not a weeds guy. I'm not good at getting the weeds. I'm a high view guy, but I know what, we need to make our community, I'm also a business guy. We need to make our community successful enough to earn this money somehow. That's our challenge through whatever these measures, and I think other measures, you never grow and get better by cutting. You just don't. You don't make a business smaller and make it more successful very often. I just wanted to say, I believe you, that's right, but I think we have a $2 million shortfall right now, not a
Yeah,
1.2.
you're not wrong. And I think we really need to open it back up and take a much closer in-depth look and really rethink what we're doing and how we're doing it and get more community input. Because I read through all the things there, and to my mind, that's nickel and dime. You're putting a Band-Aid on a sucking chest wound. We're not, the 775 that Frank needs for the jail, that's just the beginning of our issues. And we need to address it all at once and come up with some outside the box ideas. But when we get a budget, we have basically a week to look at it before we can discuss it.
Friday to Wednesday.
Okay, I'm trying to be nice.
Okay.
And then all the different pay areas are collapsed into one number as opposed to taking a look at what we're actually doing. We're not really doing our job the way it needs to be done.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments?
I want to add one thing. I did, thank you, Nancy, for replying to my email. I reached out to Nancy and Trey to see what our actual bond measure said when we went out for the library Justice Center bond. And it does indicate that one of the things we told the taxpayers, or that council told the taxpayers, which is really still us, back in 2006, was it was for a jail. So the community, at least in 2006, told us this was important. We want to invest the money in doing that. You know, I'm super not excited about having to go for an operating levy for the jail, but that's something we said we would do. And our community and all of us sitting up here are still paying on that bond for that jail. So as it sits empty. Just throw that one out there.
Well, we do have a jail.
We do. It was
The whole
built.
operating part that's missing.
Any other comments, questions?
I would look, actually, can we hear from Chief Stevenson on the jail? I'm sorry, I'm lobbing this to you. Is there, do you have any insight about what, I see the number here is 775. Do you have any insight? Is that what we would look at? What would it take to reopen the jail outside of just the financial pieces? Like, would we even have the staff for that at this time? What does insurance look like? What does providing food and medical attention look like?
Yeah, so the 775, what that really focuses in on is staffing for the jail, which would be full-time staffing. And that would also cover costs for medical and mental health aspect of what the insurance company is now requiring us to have in order to operate the jail at the level that we were. Does that make sense? So as of right now, I do not have the staffing available to run that jail successfully, right? Yeah, running a jail is a whole separate animal than a police department. And what it takes is you have to have that full-time staffing and the medical piece in order for it to, for our insurance to cover it.
And has it, I'm going to assume it's changed since 2006 in some way?
Yeah, it's
Kind of talk about that generically?
yeah. So I mean, in the beginning of time, a lot of municipalities really didn't have the jails like we do, and so over time, a few other municipalities got jails and so forth. Well, then there was some issues with the housed individuals over there that caused lawsuits that, or you have an in-death or a death inside the jail that it's a lot of money that comes out of the city for lawsuits and such. So that's kind of the insurance companies kind of looked at that and going, okay, if you guys are going to run and operate a jail, then these are the recommendations and requirements that you need to have in place for the insurance to truly cover lawsuits and things of that nature that pop up from time to time. You have injuries, you have the mental health aspect, you have a lot of different areas that are covered that you have to have there.
Does that 775 estimate kind of include the insurance too, or is it expensive?
It would include the insurance.
Okay.
It's basically an all-inclusive number. And I think we've talked a little bit that during that bond campaign, there was at least internally discussion that there would be an increase in staffing to staff the jail, but that never really came to fruition.
That is correct. Yeah.
And so, so the police department has staffed the jail with an officer pulled off the street, right? And we talked about then when we were so short-staffed and you only have 2 or 3 officers on a shift, particularly at night and on the weekends, you're pulling one off at least once an hour. And it wasn't just, stick your head in, everybody's in bed asleep and then leave. It would be, now you have to dispense medication. Somebody needs, wants a snack. And so they would be there for more time and not back out on the street. And that left the 1 or 2 officers on the street dealing with sometimes very dangerous situations without good backup. So it was creating a workload issue that was an employee safety and a community safety issue. And that's why
Yeah.
we went down that direction. So this is really, the chief and his staff have worked through, kind of how scheduling would work. So it would be 5 FTE in the jail. That would give us 24/7 coverage. They would be supervised by existing staff. It would be the meals, mental health, physical health, and then continuing the relationship we have, for example, with the hospital for certain care and cases. So all of that's really built into that number.
If that money was sitting there right now, how long would it take to actually open the jail?
It's a
I'm
recruitment
not
and
asking for
hiring
the date.
process, and you
Yeah.
got to find people who are certified or send them to
But I think
DPSST.
that would have something to
I'd
do
say
with-
I'd say probably about 6 months to
Yeah.
6 to 8 months.
That might fit into some of the timelines you gave us on these methods. I think that
I mean,
It might.
consider.
I mean, one thing to keep in mind with the jails is, before we were practically making it work, and as Nancy touched on, we were pulling officers off the road, which in case, they're taking about 15 minutes to a half hour, depending on how full the jail is. And the Lebanon jail consistently was full. I think I went back to 2019, which is pre-COVID and everything. And out of the year, there was only about a week and a half where we didn't have anybody in our jail. So there was somebody consistently in there that was through the municipal, that was, I guess, convicted or not convicted, but during time in the jail. So what I'm trying to say is we were making it work to the point where we can no longer make it work.
Yeah, it wasn't the right way.
It wasn't the right way to operate a jail, especially at the level that we were operating. There's too many things that are in place now that would, cause for error. And that is just, the risk there is just too high.
I got you. And we kind of bounced around in this algebra before, but it's impossible to figure what it's costing us not to have a active jail right now, as far as your efforts and what it's costing our community and not being able to police it properly. I don't know
Correct.
if that's impossible to figure out, I think.
Well, I mean, you're starting to see the crime rates in themselves starting to rise. The petty thefts, things that the low-level crimes are starting to rise. The car thefts, criminal mischiefs, all these things that you're seeing that are livability issues. You're starting to see an increase in that because there's no accountability for their actions. They can go out and do these kinds of things and know the worst that they're going to get is a piece of paper telling them that they need to come to court. And that's unacceptable to me, and I know it's unacceptable to the community, but at the point where if we want the jail to operate the jail in the safest manner that we want, then we have to have certain things in place in order for that to happen. I can no longer rely on patrol officers to come off the street to help maintain the individuals that are housed. It's too much of a risk there, because there are times, correct? I mean, there are times when I only have 2 officers working, and those 2 officers are out dealing with much more high priority things where we might miss a check, we might miss this, we might miss this. And during that time where we miss something really bad could happen, an overdose, which we all know is happening on a daily basis, not daily, but it's pretty much there. And, when that happens in the jail, you have to have someone there in order to address the issue that's happening. And I mean, it's just running a jail again is a whole nother animal, but the number that's there is what it would take to get what we need to operate it properly.
Something you said set something off in my head. How many of that population are remand from the court, and how many are folks that you arrest fresh, waiting to go to court?
The individuals that we have are remanded from court.
Okay, so if you get someone with an FTA
Mhm.
that the county won't take them, so you're still not going to put them in jail to wait to see the judge.
It really truly
It's
depends.
going to be the remand.
It is a remand, but we will hold warrants for the judge. So if we arrest somebody for an FTA or an FTC or failed to comply or failed to appear, we will hold them for the judge. Whereas right now we do not.
Well, yeah, but when you were open, how many were they all remand?
I wouldn't say all of them are remand.
The lion's share.
I would say the majority are remand, but if, for instance, if we pick somebody up on the FTA warrant that you're talking about, we will hold them for the judge, and the judge will come and either sentence them or release them. So
Okay.
we had that tool in place where the judge would
I
come
was just
in.
wondering how often you use it, because we all see people out on the street and you're wondering, they're doing bad things. Why
Yeah.
in the heck aren't they in jail waiting to see a judge?
We used it consistently when it was operating. If someone was picked up on warrant, they spent time in our facility until the judge got to them. But I'd say the majority of the sentenced individual were sentenced from the court.
But yeah, because I know when I've ridden with your guys, we stop people and they consistently will have 4 or 5 FTA warrants, but nobody will take them.
Right now,
It's
correct.
like, let me give you another one.
Right. And that's what we're faced with right now.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Any other questions, comments from council? From staff?
Nope.
All righty. Thank you, Nancy, for the presentation.
Yeah.
And Chief, thank you for your input. The work session is adjourned at 5:48. We'll reconvene for general regular meeting at 6 o'clock.
Yeah.
If, I don't think we'll go up.
Oh, man, I'm ready. Just nudge me when I start dozing. It's been since 4:30 this morning. Yeah, we had to have her to the hospital at 5:30.
Here though, right?
Hmm?
Here in town.
Yeah.
Call the meeting to order. Please rise for the flag salute.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Will the deputy city recorder please call roll?
Counselor Steinhebel,
Here.
Counselor Dykstra,
Here.
Counselor Mann,
Here.
Counselor Workman,
Here.
Counselor Elfers,
Here.
Counselor Salvage is absent.
Go to the next item, consent calendar. The following consent calendar items are considered routine and will be enacted by one motion. There will not be a separate discussion of these items unless a counselor so requests. In this case, the item will be removed from the consent calendar and considered separately. Agenda, Lebanon City Council Agenda, July 12, 2023. Board minutes, Park Trees Trails Advisory Committee, April 19th, 2023. Council meeting, June 14th, 2023, regular session, and deed transfer from Lynn County for extension of Ralston Street. Is there a motion?
I so move.
So-
Motion's been made to approve. It's been seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. Presentations. The first presentation tonight is an update by Republic Services.
Okay, am I on? I think I am. Good evening. I'm
Yeah, a
a
little
little
bit.
closer. Okay. I'm Julie Jackson. I'm the municipal manager for Republic Services, and I'm here tonight to update you on some things that we talked about in December, I think. I know there are some new faces, and so I'll give you a little description of what we talked about in December, if it makes sense, and then we can tell you, or I'll let you know what we've been doing about it. So one of the things that we talked about in December was customer service. And I think there were some concerns about people having trouble getting through, longer than average times to wait on hold and those kinds of things. So I'm really happy to be able to tell you this. Not for lack of trying. During COVID, we really were down in numbers. We have a group of people. We do have a call center, but our call center people across the country all work remotely. During COVID, they went home and they worked remotely, and they found that they liked it and that their statistics went up. They were answering calls faster, providing more single call resolution and those kinds of things. So the company made a commitment to keep folks working remotely. And it's been a really good model for us. But during COVID, I think as many of you experienced, it was really hard to hire people. And even shortly after, still in December, we were working through that. We had about 14 people working in what we call the Oregon Pod. So they are a group of customer service folks who are trained just to answer calls in Oregon. And anytime you call to one of the numbers in Oregon, because we still have our Oregon phone numbers, you will get those people first. 14 wasn't enough, and so we are now up to 30 people in the Oregon Pod, and plus one supervisor. So that's really good news. It's a hard job. It takes a little while to train those folks, but we feel really confident that they're up to speed now and doing a great job. The other piece that's really nice for us is that the supervisor of that entire pod, along with some others, is a person who has worked for us for years and resides in Albany. So we have a direct line to the boss now, and we feel like that's been a really good situation. So what I can tell you about that is that the average speed of answer, which is just a technical term, but the amount of time that it takes for them to answer was about 41 seconds in January. It is in June, it was 21 seconds. So that tells us that they're really up to speed and they're trained well and they're doing a good job. We've seen a reduction in the number of complaints. There have only been 15 complaints since January that came in, and of those 15, 5 happened in May, and May was when we did a reroute, and I'll touch on that in a minute. But there were 3 compliments, and most of the complaints were for missed pickup. Several of those, when we went back and looked at the account, the driver had called in and placed a note that the cart wasn't out, which we know happens a lot. So we think that's pretty good. We're pretty happy with that, and we intend for that to continue to go down. The 5 comments that we had about the reroute were folks, a reroute is a tough thing. It's a really tough thing for folks to go through. I think we all are creatures of habit, and we end up, my garbage day was Friday, and that's the day I remember to put things out, and that's just how I've done it for years. And mine changed to Wednesday during the reroute, and many, many people's service day changed. But the reason we do reroutes are to increase efficiency. So I like to think of it as that junk drawer that I have in the kitchen. And you know how you just keep throwing stuff in that junk drawer because that's the only place you have to put it? Eventually, you have to clean that drawer out and you put things where they really belong. And that's sort of what a reroute does. We continue to add new developments, new homes, new apartment buildings to existing routes. And pretty soon those routes just get so full that the driver has a hard time completing them during the course of one day. So we have to do a reroute. We make the routes much more efficient, and then we start throwing stuff in the junk drawer again. Eventually, we will do a reroute again 5 to 10 years from now, probably. But it ends up often changing the day, and that can cause a lot of trouble for folks who have had the same day for a long time. We sent out information on billing notes. Not everybody gets a paper bill, so we did call blasts. We did one for the first 2 weeks to every single customer. We know not everybody answers those calls. It's really tough to talk to people, but we put it on our website. We tried to call people and let them know, hey, remember, tomorrow's your new day. Please make sure you have your carts out. Feels like that was in May, feels like a month and a half later, we're pretty well solving that issue and people know when their day is, and it's not a problem anymore. But we anticipated a few extra calls during that time. So that's kind of the customer service situation. Community recycle events. There was some conversation about not having a place for cardboard and places to recycle things like electronics. So we have in January, I think, we placed a cardboard box at the little, the old gas station next to Ralston Park that anyone can use. Now, I will tell you that I don't think that people are real aware of that yet. Some people are because it's getting filled up. And we have a driver who just goes by a couple times a week and checks that and empties that. But that's been a really easy solution. We just have to continue to get the word out about that. It's there all the time. And then we've added, we have always done one spring, what we call spring recycle event, where we come and we take lots of materials. We've added 3 of those. So we're doing 3 more, I'm going to call them sort of mini recycle events in conjunction with Public Works. And those we take scrap metal, commingled recycling, cardboard, large appliances like refrigerators and stoves, and also electronic waste. So we're doing those 4 times a year now, and we think as that catches on, people will really appreciate that. Again, getting the word out's tough, but I have some cards. I'm going to leave you a stack tonight. These are at City Hall. I've dropped those off a couple times. They're also at the Chamber of Commerce. We've got it on our website. We have asked the chamber to put it on their reader board as those events come up. So the next one is on August 5th, and you will see that, I believe, on the reader board at the chamber as that comes up. So we hope that people take part. We've had people every time, but not a whole lot, maybe 20 people come to each one of those. And I anticipate that as people tend to know about that more and they get their calendar for the year of 2024, they'll know when these events are better, and we will see more participation there. But those are the ways that we tried. Oh, and one other thing, we are working with Lynn County to get it on their website, to get some information there too for people who might see it there. Counselor Alfers asked me about the soup kitchen, and there were some issues. It was kind of a customer service / service issue, I think. And so the next day after that meeting in December, I went over to the soup kitchen and I talked to Christine over there. And in listening to her talk about what the real issues were, what we really decided was it was the wrong level of service. They had on-call service because they were trying to save some money. And we determined that what they really needed, especially with a food-heavy kind of waste, was weekly service for the container that they had. So there was a great solution. Because they are a charitable organization, I was able to get her to apply through our charitable foundation online for a grant. And then what we did was we told them to apply for the amount of money that it would cost for 1 year to provide weekly service for their container. And I think that's been a really good solution for them. They just, they just are too busy to be calling and trying to get service at the last minute. So I think that's been a great solution. That's one that we can provide to them every year. They just have to reapply and update the grant each year, and we can continue to provide that service. We have also provided donations to the Strawberry Parade. We took part in the All Heroes Day, put some Dutch Bros gift cards in the bags for those 100 hero bags. We have donated to the Boys and Girls Club, downtown cleanup, the firework display, and other items. We sent Darren Weibel, one of our drivers, over, who is a veteran, to hand out those bags at the All Heroes Day. He was really proud to do that. So that was a great solution too. And we love to have, I think last time I had some drivers here with me, we really like to get them involved in the community so they hear what you have to say as well. So those are kind of the things that I think we touched on, some of the issues in December and some of the things we've done in response to that. I'm real open to questions or suggestions, anything you'd like to tell me.
Well, yes, actually, I have a question.
Good.
Why did you stop doing yard waste for commercial accounts?
I don't think that we have stopped
Yes,
doing
you
that.
have.
Where
We-
have,
we
well,
took
it may,
over- We took over one, our apartments out here.
Mhm.
And when I called in to switch it off, they said that, no, there's no longer any yard waste pickup for commercial accounts.
Usually we provide one cart for commercial accounts, and you may have gotten bad information now that I tell you these folks are all up to speed, but we can take care of that pretty easily. If you want to, I'll leave a card for you and give me a call and we'll get it fixed.
Yeah, I mean, it saved me $980 a year, but now I have to pay a yard person because the suggestion was, well, you can cut it yourself and take it out to the dump. It's like, I'm not going to pay those exorbitant prices that you pay when you take it to the dump.
So you might be surprised how low it is at the landfill to take just yard
Shocked
debris,
when I went last time, so
but,
I'm cheap, so.
well, there's nothing wrong with that. But I think we can remedy that
That's
for
what
you.
your
I-
call center person told
And
me.
it may be that you got someone, so as I said, those 30 people get the calls first that come to Oregon, but if they're all on the line, you might have gotten somebody someplace else, or I don't know what. Just lucky us that that happened to you, but I will make sure that we get that taken care of if you give me a call or send me an email.
Okay, yeah, because it
'Cause
seems
we
like I
do.
just,
We
when
don't
it comes to
provide
Republic Service, I
unlimited.
seem to just get lucky.
Yeah, we don't provide unlimited yard debris services for commercial accounts, but they get one for a commercial account. So if that's
Okay.
what you had before, we can make that
So I just
change.
got some bad info. Okay.
Any other questions or comments?
I, advertising wise, you're talking about the call thing. Happen to work in an industry where we use texting a lot. I would look into that if I was you, send and blast texts out to people. Everybody, 98% of texts are answered or looked at in 2
We
minutes.
do those as well. I forgot to mention that, but we do those as well. We
Because
can,
mine changed, and I did, it went to 5 o'clock in the morning.
we only
from-
get those for folks who have provided us with an email address or a phone number that we can send them to. So it might be worth checking your account to see if that's something that we have for you, because we'd be glad to do that.
Okay.
We do have an app, and that's another way for you to get those. I think we are not too far off from a point where you'll be able to use our app to check and see where your truck is and see if you have time to run and get your card out and all of those kinds of things, or see if you've been missed or something else. So we're getting real close to that.
I was in the audience last time, but there was some talk, if I remember correctly, about low income, people being able to call you and say we're low income and getting a break. Did that follow through? Pardon?
Yeah.
That's a good catch. I forgot about that. Thank you.
Yeah, so we are, I believe, waiting for that list. So what our line was, we don't have the capacity to vet those folks. So we need that list from the city for the folks who have qualified for low-income assistance through the city. And then those folks can give us a call and we'll give them the discount as well.
Okay, because that sounds like something needs to be followed up on somehow.
That possibly could be something that you could coordinate through CSC.
I think
Since they do the,
isn't it already coordinated through them, the city's plan?
I believe that we have CSC do that for us, so let me double check and we can
And
get
one
you
of the
that.
questions to ask, because we're also working through this with the city of Albany, is that I think CSC is somewhat reluctant to provide those names to us. It would need to be the city that provides those to us, not CSC, even though they're the organization that vets it. But we felt like that was a really fair way to do it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sure.
Any other questions or comments?
nope.
Thank you so much.
Great. I'll leave some cards and I'll leave these cards with the dates for the recycle events as well.
All righty. Thank you. Next presentation will be by the Oregon Council West Council of Governments.
Good evening, Mayor and City Councilors. Thank you so much for having me. I know that you're very busy, so I'll try not to take up too much of your time. For the record, and for those of you who weren't here last time, my name is Ryan Vogt, and I am the Executive Director for the Oregon Cascades West Council of Governments. In your packet, or earlier, I believe you received a copy of our annual report, and this is our second go-around, so it continues to be a work in progress. But it's, I think it's a pretty strong attempt for us to try and start to articulate the story of all the different ways we exist in the community. We have a board member who regularly refers to us as a friendly octopus because we just have our hands in so many things. At least he refers to us as friendly, so I take that as a good sign in the right direction as well. When I was out here last time, I made a commitment that as we moved from the first set of annual reports to the second set, I was going to try to break out each member agency into their own report. And so you'll see that this year you have information that is specific to our footprint in Lebanon. And I think this is really a giant advancement for us to be able to tell our story a little bit about really how we're here and what all it is that we're doing. It is still a work in progress. A lot of our data is missing, particularly as it relates to our senior and people with disabilities work and the number of cases that are managed. But we are getting closer, and I hope you find it informative about really what's happening. I don't intend to belabor that report at all. I'm happy to do my best to answer questions if you have any, but really I wanted to talk about a couple things that are a little bit more current since that was a year-old close report. And forgive me if this is redundant because you know, some of this information has perhaps already been shared with you. But as you may know, we've been assisting and ushering the broadband project for the Linn-Benton-Lincoln region. And that body of work, the first phase of that work, the feasibility study, is really coming to a close. Our contractor, Celerity, We'll be completing the feasibility study for the three-county area on August 31st. But on July 20th, there's going to be a virtual meeting where they're going to display the maps. This will show the unserved and underserved areas and the preliminary costs to close the gap to be able to provide service to those areas throughout the three-county region. I also want to share on that broadband line that Solarity was working with Peak Internet to close a gap with one of the other loans they already have, or one of the other grants they have to provide service. And so they've submitted just shy of a $5 million project to serve the northeast area of Lebanon. And that's one of the two projects they're going to write for the three-county area. We don't yet know whether or not that's going to be approved, but that's on its way. And then I also wanted to celebrate, and again, you may have heard this, that we applied again. We've been successful in the past at applying for and reaching out for brownfields grants. And we were awarded, COG was awarded $1 million worth of brownfields grants. One of those sites that's going to be explored there is the Champion Mill site. Is going to be one of the places that they're taking a look at to start to figure out what it's going to take to recover that site back into usable land and move that work out. And I think the only other thing that I really wanted to share is that one of the things that the COG has consistently been asked to help with is to be able to provide assistance chasing grants, particularly infrastructure grants. There's a lot of money out there right now, but many cities don't have really the resources to try and chase grants or to administer certain grants. And so we're in the process of trying to fill 3 positions dedicated to doing just grant writing and grant administration for member agencies. I don't know what I'm going to get in the way of people who are applying for that job. I'm super excited to be introducing this. And we did receive some money from the legislature to provide technical assistance and ramp up grant work on infrastructures, as long as we can make some reasonable connection to preparing the city for longer term possibilities for housing expansion. So I think that can be everything from water upgrades to street upgrades to utility upgrades. And the commitment that I've been making out there is once we get them on board, we will do some work with introductions and getting them familiar with the region. But my plan is to cost share those positions. So if the city wishes to utilize one of our resources to chase a grant, I would cost share the person with you 50-50 while they're writing the grant and that kind of stuff. And then hopefully, at some point in time, they will successfully pull grants in, and some of the grant administration dollars would offset some of that 50% component, and it'll be an evergreen program if we do it right. Now, I am happy to fill time if you need me to, but not
No,
my plan.
Is there any questions?
No.
Comments? Thank you so much for coming in and giving your presentation.
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate it.
Okay, move on to public comments. Citizens may address the council by filling out a testimony card prior to speaking and hand it to the city recorder. Each citizen is provided up to 5 minutes to provide comment to council. The council may take additional 2 minutes to ask clarifying questions. City recorder will accept and distribute written comments at speaker's request. Looking at some of the cards tonight, there's 4 concerning busing out to the side out there. Suzanne Arroyo. So these are all in Ward 3. Here, you can,
Can you, well, I'm going to hear from him in a second.
I mean, this issue is more for the school board and the superintendent. What did they say? I guess we're getting into an issue here.
Perdón, buenas tardes a todos. Voy a hablarles en español y le
Good
pedí.
afternoon, everybody. I'm going to speak to you in Spanish.
And-
I requested. No voy a querer hacer políticas, pero quiero hacer un poco de diplomacia, por eso pedí a un intérprete de la corte que me pudiera, les pudiera explicar mis sentimientos.
I'm not here in a political bandstand. I'm trying to be a diplomat, and that's the reason I requested a court interpreter to help me out.
Cuando empecé a trabajar en Colonia Paz hace unos 3 meses,
3 months ago, I started working for Colonial Paz.
me presenté con el señor Kenneth por medio de un correo electrónico.
I introduced myself to Mr. Kenneth through an email.
Y he estado teniendo algunos correos con el distrito escolar pidiendo el transporte escolar para la Colonia Paz.
And I have had some email exchange with the school district requesting school bus for Colonia Paz.
No he podido contactar una cita en persona con la superintendente que está de intermediaria.
I have not been able to concert an appointment with the interim superintendent in person, to meet in person.
Su secretaria me ha hecho el favor de comunicarme con la directora de transportes públicos de las escuelas.
Her secretary put me in touch with the public transportation for the schools.
Nosotros hicimos una construcción que tiene una glorieta pública del tamaño de una avenida pública, no de una colonia.
The construction where we are, it has a turnaround the size of an avenue, not a colony, but an avenue size turnaround.
Entonces, cada vez que he comunicado algo con la señora de transporte, he tenido respuesta como, la primera fue que el señor que les entrena a sus choferes dijo que el espacio era muy pequeño para poder maniobrar sus camiones.
The first response I got from the person from transportation was that there is not enough room to have the buses turn around.
Pero tengo a la gente de los camiones de bomberos, que tienen camiones más grandes, que pueden maniobrar perfectamente en nuestras avenidas, inclusive en nuestros estacionamientos.
However, the fire trucks that are even bigger are able to move around completely, even on the side streets.
No, la segunda respuesta fue que teníamos algún carro estacionado y el camión no iba a poder pasar, pero sigue siendo una avenida, un tamaño avenida en donde nosotros estamos trabajando para que no haya ningún carro estropeando el tráfico.
Second response was, well, if there are cars parked in that spot, the bus are not going to be able to go around. However, it is an avenue size road, and we're working to be sure that no car is parked in there to stop the bus.
Entonces, nosotros estamos tratando de representar a 140 familias, de las cuales 24 familias solamente son del edificio de agricultores.
I'm here representing 140 families. 24 of those are from the agricultural building.
Mis muchachos que van a la escuela es un promedio de 89 jóvenes de la edad de 6 a 18 años.
I have 89 students between 6 and 18 years old.
De los cuales hay recién nacidos, por lo menos 10 de recién nacidos a 6 meses. Y tengo muchos estudiantes que son de habilidades diferentes o lo que ustedes dirían que tienen alguna deshabilidad.
I have 10 newborn babies. And I have several students who qualify for what you call disabilities. I call them different abilities.
Entonces, los padres de familia que vienen acompañándome solamente son una muestra de las personas que viven con nosotros, porque realmente tenemos mucha más gente de low income que del Departamento de Agricultura.
The people who are here with me is just a sample of the many people that live in that place. and they qualify as low income and agricultural workers.
Yo les vengo a suplicar que piensen en los jóvenes que van a la preparatoria, que sus padres a lo mejor pueden comprar un par de tenis, pero que caminan 40 minutos para llegar a la escuela en circunstancias de temperaturas muy variantes, pero que pueden pasar todo el día con los tenis mojados y no tienen la oportunidad de estar pensando en expandir sus horizontes precisamente por la incomodidad que han tenido durante el día para poder llegar a la escuela.
I'm here to beg you to consider my high school students who need to walk 40 minutes to get to school, and then they will hang around all day long with wet shoes. It is important to start thinking about opportunities, but how can you do that when you are so uncomfortable with your feet wet all day long?
Los niños de kinder a quinto año tienen que caminar 1.7 millas, cruzar avenidas, y el problema no es para los niños que los llevan sus padres. El problema es para los niños que tienen que ir solos y cruzar esas avenidas.
Now, about my students that are from kindergarten to fifth grade, they have to walk 1.7 miles and they have to cross busy avenues. The problem is not the children. El problema no son los niños, sino los padres.
No es solamente los niños, pero también los padres que tienen que llevarlos.
The problem is not the children whose parents are taking them there. The problem is for the parents who have to spend the time to take their children to school.
Y hay muchos papás que llegan a trabajar de noche para poder compartir las responsabilidades de los gastos, porque estamos hablando de gente que tiene menos que el nivel de pobreza. Son personas que están pagando a lo mejor un 30% de lo que deberían de pagar en una renta.
And many of these families have one of the parents working nights in order to make ends meet. We're talking about people who lives under the level of poverty, and these people are paying 30% of what rent will normally be.
Entonces, les suplico que escuchen a los residentes que tengo, pero yo hasta este momento he recibido una carta del departamento del distrito escolar diciendo que siguen trabajando en eso después de un mes de espera.
I'm begging you to please help me out. Listen to the people who is here to talk to. I have been waiting for over a month from the school who's telling me they're looking into it, but giving me no answers.
Así que no sé qué otra dirección tomar y por eso vine a usar su tiempo.
I don't know what to do. That's the reason I'm here wasting your time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Did you have any comments?
¿Tienes algún comentario? Sí.
Hello, I'm Michelle. I'm one of your two Ward 3 counselors, which Colonia de Paz is in that ward. I'm pausing in case you need to translate, or interpret, sorry. Okay, all right, thank you. School, this is really a school issue. They are here tomorrow night in the same building where they will meet. The school board will be here at 6 o'clock tomorrow. The city really doesn't have any, jurisdiction of making those buses pick them up there at the apartment for you. But what I will say is I'm happy to help be a conduit and help you work with the school to see if we can come up with a better solution for the kids that live over there. Again, I can't make any promises because I'm not a school board member. I do not work for the schools, but I'm happy to help and step in and be a conduit to contacts over there. Because if what you're saying is accurate, that does seem like a really long way to walk for children, and there's certainly a safety issue with that, but.
A mí me dieron dos opciones. Para los niños de high school tienen que caminar 17 minutos y es en sentido opuesto a donde va la escuela. Esa es una.
One of the options that was proposed for the high schoolers is that they will walk 17 minutes in the contrary direction from school to take the bus there.
Si es que lo alcanzan.
At Seven Oak Middle School, I assume?
Yeah.
Yes.
Y la otra es recoger a los niños de kinder a quinto año en la calle que da esquina con el estacionamiento de Walmart.
And the other option is for the kindergartens to fifth graders to walk to the parking lot of Walmart and be picked up there.
Nosotros pagamos licencia para tener el roundabout porque en ese espacio pudiéramos albergar a otras 24 familias con otro edificio o tener alberca o tener otro centro, pero se nos hizo construir y poner una caseta para el camión. Entonces, creemos que es un lugar más adecuado porque tiene parque. Ahí podemos recoger a nuestros alumnos.
We spent the space that could have been used for another building, building the roundabout and housing for the people to wait for the bus. That will be the perfect location because there is a park there.
Well, again, I'm happy to help you coordinate with the school district. I can't make, I can't direct their staff to do that, but I'm happy to help you be put into contacts, especially with Interim Superintendent Meckley. I'm happy to help you with that. So if my card's up there, please email me and let's work on a solution together with the school district for this. So.
When's the board meeting? Tomorrow night?
Board meeting again for school board, which really has the jurisdiction for this, is tomorrow night here at 6 o'clock.
Y cualquier persona de la sociedad puede venir o no.
Can anybody come over?
Yes, anybody can come in same public comment situation just like this, and their board will be here. And Interim Superintendent Meckley will also be here too, so.
Entonces, les quiero pedir a todos ustedes que no dejen esto que se quede sin aclarar, por favor, porque no quiero organizar una guerra, yo quiero organizar algo bonito en esta ciudad tan bonita.
Please don't forget about this. Please help me out. I don't want a war. I want this to be something nice. I'm here asking in a good way. I want this to be something nice and pretty and nice for everybody.
And thank you for your time. I do speak English. I'm a U.S. citizen born abroad, but I didn't want to make a mistake and didn't lead you where I was needing to. Thank you for
Completely
your time.
understand. I also see probably some Spanish speakers in the back, so it's important that they're able to hear what you're saying. So thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you for your interpretation.
Thank you so much. I'll be seeing you, the community tomorrow at 9,
Y
I believe it is.
I hope you love it. I hope you love it because it's a beautiful place where
Yeah.
the next level, I want them to be able to put their key in their own doors. Then that's why we need education. There's no other way.
Yeah. But like the council person was saying that we have no jurisdiction in this. So it's up to the school board. The school board is who you need to talk to. And I know she will help you out with that. So, all righty.
Yes, Mayor, but I need you there.
Thank you so much.
I don't work in a different school district.
Thank you.
So the other ones concerning that subject, we're not going to be hearing tonight because they can save their comments for the school board meeting. Anna Krill.
Hello, I'm Anna Creel. I'm in Ward 2. Full disclosure, I'm here to talk about the Lebanon Skate Park. And for full disclosure, I am a new member of the Parks, Trails, and Trees Committee, but I'm here on behalf of the Lebanon Skate Park Watch that Dela helped us put together last summer when we were having so many issues with people in the park using the skate park. And unfortunately, we're back to where we kind of started. We had a lot of, worked a lot last summer getting it cleaned up. And I know that we have a new mayor and new council members, so I wanted to come and kind of bring you guys into the circle of what's going on. We worked really hard cleaning up the park last summer, getting the park bench or the picnic tables that were being destroyed by participants, got them out of there and kind of cleaned it up. Public Works came in and cleaned up the park, trimmed up some trees so it was easier to monitor and stuff like that. It's been fairly quiet except for July 4th weekend. We had quite the event Sunday night. We had a girl fight, and then we also had a DUI and a hit and run right in front of the park. The guy stopped his car and abandoned it and ran away because he knew the police were coming, and it was kind of frustrating for that. But we have been able to get, we're making our calls like Chief Stevenson told me last summer, call, 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 and Dalix tells us call, call, call. And that's why she helped us put the skate park watch together so neighbors can be diligent. And the participants know that, there are signs that says that there is a park watch so that we do report suspicious activity. So we're still dealing with graffiti that's been in the park it hasn't been cleaned up yet. There's new graffiti there. We have minors in the park that are smoking and vaping. And even though there are signs on the initial board as you walk in or drive in, there is a no smoking or vaping sign for the per municipal code. We had a police officer come out one time because we had some students that were not being very nice to the neighbors and were very annoying and very trying to kind of cause an altercation with us, and which was kind of silly because we're adults and they're not. But the officers told us that the state legislature has really kind of tied their hands and that they are not allowed to cite an MIP. And that frustrates me because why have municipal codes and try to enforce them if the state says that we can't or our policemen cannot enforce those codes? I'm really concerned. When I came to the meeting tonight, there was a group of young men in there that were lighting bottle rockets and setting them off. They were holding them and it was going over the fence, and the grass over there by the railroad track is tinder dry. As soon as the spark hits that, it's going to take off in a raging fire. So that's got us as neighbors kind of concerned about that. Parking is still an issue with people parking inside the park next to the cement, and the cement's starting to come apart because of the pressure of the cars. They're not, it's made for skating and that kind of stuff. And we want the park to be safe for all age groups. And then there's no stop signs on Harrison Street except for at the very end at 2nd Street. So when the young drivers especially come flying out of the gravel parking lot, fishtailing, sending gravel everywhere, they have a tendency to kind of fishtail on that street, and it's not very safe when people are standing around talking. I know one of my neighbors was telling me that they were standing out in their driveway and a car came around 2nd Street onto Harrison so fast that he lost control and almost sideswiped them as they were standing in their driveway. And I said, "Did you report it to the police?" And she said, "No." I said, "Please call their non-emergency line and let them know that there's stuff going on." So anyway, I was just kind of here, just kind of bring council up to speed and know that there's still some concerns that we have with safety and making sure that everyone is safe at the skate park when they're there. I know that we did turn off the water last summer to kind of encourage the ones that were causing the problems not to hang around all day, but it is kind of hot, so I don't know if there's an option to turn that water back on for those people that need to be hydrated, that, because it's kind of hot, and I do get concerned about that. But anyway, thank you so much for your time, and I appreciate you, and I appreciate what you've done so far, what we've done so far with the skate park, and I hopefully we can continue to work. So
I'd just like to say real quick,
Yeah.
I'm your city council person, one of
Okay.
them. And I'm on the advisory committee for the
Right.
Parks, Streets and Trails. Thank you for coming aboard.
Yeah.
I'd like to take some time with you sometime. That's a lot of information, and I know it's a big problem. I think one way to maybe approach this is to start taking a bite at a time
Mhm.
and see if we can solve some of those, because I have no idea how to solve that,
Right.
all that for you right
Right.
now.
Well, I know that Public Works has some things in the hopper. They've got some fencing that's ready to be put up, but they
I'd
don't
just be
know.
willing
Yeah,
to outline that
perfect.
stuff and get a little game plan for you.
That'd be great.
Because I've driven by there, I ride my bike by there, which is during the day, so it's not probably the worst times or anything. But I feel your pain.
Yeah.
And I think you have my contact information if you don't have a card.
Okay.
So talk to me and
Okay.
we'll see if we can start to eat that elephant.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much. All right. Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to move into regular session now. Item number 1, Department of Land Conservation and Development Technical Assistant Grant, application submittal authorization. That's quite a mouthful. Be presented by Director Kelly Hart.
Hello, all. So over the last year and a half, we've been working on the housing production strategy that's getting ready to be finalized and before you in September. Now the next step is to actually start implementing it. And so the Department of Land Conservation and Development is putting out a grant opportunity to help pay for a consultant to help us do the next step of some grant applications. And as part of that grant submittal application, we request a resolution of authorization from the city council. So that's what's before you tonight. And so the grant's due on July 30th, with awarding sometime in October to start the work probably in January or February of next year. Available to answer any questions.
Any questions from council?
No.
City Attorney, please read the title of the resolution.
Resolution number 2023-10, a resolution authorizing submittal of an application for the DLCD Community Assistance Grant and authorizing the city manager to sign all appropriate associated documents.
Call for a motion.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion's been made to, for approval. It's been seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The resolution passes.
Thank you.
Cup Kelly.
Move on to the second item in regular session, approval to award Cheetah Lake Waterline and Sanitation Sewer Extension Project. Director Whitlatch.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and City Council. As you alluded to in your intro, we are here to recommend award of the Cheetah Lake Park Utilities Project. This is part one of the overall project that's going to go on at Cheetah Lake. First thing would be to get water line there. You can see we received 6 bids, which surprising for this time of year, with the low responsive bid being North Core USA. They're out of Salem, Oregon. We've never worked with them before, but hear good things about them. One thing to note that in our budget this year, we budgeted about $2,023,000, kind of set it aside for this project. So in order to complete the project, we'll probably have to eliminate the Vine Street 5th to 7th water line and the Sherman Street Main to 2nd water line replacements, which add about $350,000 to this project, which is more than what it's actually bid for, but we like to go into these with a contingency. With that, I'm able to answer any questions, and we do recommend award to North Core USA.
You're comfortable with them since we've never worked with them before?
Yeah, I mean, they're an offshoot of Pacific Excavation, so
Oh, okay.
yeah, they'll be fine.
Gotcha.
Any other questions? Is there a motion?
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion's been moved to approve. It's been seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. Move on to item 3, Vaughn Lane, no parking, same person.
Excellent. Thank you again. So attached to the memo is a photograph of the area that we're talking about. We've received multiple complaints, and I'm sure City Council has received multiple complaints. I know the police department has received multiple complaints of abandoned vehicles, people parking overnight on this section of On Lane. While it is wide enough to park there, it really doesn't serve anybody as far as parking. We sent notice out to the surrounding property owners, let them know that we were going to come to council and recommend that there be no parking. The comments we got back were all in favor of that. So with that, we would ask that council pass a resolution restricting the parking on that portion of On Lane.
They all said thank you.
So we cleaned that area up once before. Has it stayed clear
As
since
far
then?
as I know, it has. I haven't been down there for probably a week,
You
but I
get the
haven't seen
onesies or
anything.
twosies out there now, but it's not like the nomad camp that it was.
Okay. What was that area initially designed for? School buses?
No, so when that mobile home community was built, they built the half street improvement for Vaughn Lane there. So that is what the street width will be, and then same thing on the other side at some point in the future.
Okay.
What we're trying to do, we've got several developments down there right now. We're trying to do non-remonstrance agreements with those developers so that as we build the street, when we do it all in one shot, rather than in these offshoots like Walker Road used to be, to avoid some of this in the future.
Okay. Any other questions, comments? Will the city attorney please read the title of the resolution?
Resolution number 2023-12, resolution eliminating parking on a portion of Vaughn Lane within the city of Lebanon.
Move for approval.
Second.
Motion's been made to approve. It's been seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? The resolution passes.
Thank you.
And item number 4, city manager's report. Nancy Brewer.
Thank you. I have several things. In your written report, there are some references to attachments that we missed getting attached to the packet. My apologies for that. So we got the annual report from Community Services Consortium and asked them to pull out some Lebanon-specific data, much as the COG did. That is in your email inbox now this evening, along with the real strategic plan for economic development for the 8 cities area that we missed getting attached to the written report. So I just wanted to highlight that for you, and we'll get it appended to the packet online. A note that Parks, Trees, and Trails at their last meeting started looking at Cheetah Lake plan for ball diamonds and amphitheaters. That's back on the agenda next Wednesday for more discussion, a lot of discussion about locations of ADA parking and backstage space for bands and offloading trucks and things that will come into more design work on that. But if you're interested, you might take a look at that packet for the meeting next week to see kind of a layout of how that park would look. And if you've got comments on it, Ron Whitlatch would be your comment receiver. Bring it on. And then I've got, just as some additionals, there's a note in the city manager's report about an operator at the wastewater treatment plant who has been identified as the operator of the year for the Civic Northwest Clean Water organization, our section, which basically runs Salem to Eugene, Cascades to Coast. That operator is Randy Swank, so we're very proud of him. The power outage we had a week ago, just some interesting information to share on the outcome of that. Generators at the wastewater treatment plant worked just fine. We had problems at the Justice Center, which meant we also lost data for a while, but we got that generator restarted. And Public Works is working to make sure. We had tested it the week before and it worked, so trying to work through what the challenge was. I think it had to do with the backup batteries. So those are being replaced. We do not want to lose power at the Justice Center at all. So working through repairing that. One of the interesting positives out of COVID was we had several employees who were able to come to their office, pick up work, and go home and work remotely. Once we had the data center back up in the Justice Center, they could access all of their files, able to forward telephones to a cell phone. So like utility billing customers were able to get through and get assistance in those things. So a lot of the investments that were made during COVID to let people work during COVID are still paying off nicely. That was good to see. We do have point in time count for homelessness from CSC. Our count was 52 in Lebanon, people who identified as having no shelter. To that end, we are also working on, and first part of next week should have up a homeless web page on our city website that includes basically all of the work that we've been doing to date. We'll have links to service providers. The police department's working on a brochure of information they can hand out to people as they work with them, as our community police officers go out and talk with homeless people about services that are available. We have some FAQs, and we'll have a link to a complaint form there if somebody wants to report a camp or a pile of garbage, any kinds of problems, they would be able to do that. Wanted to give you that as a heads up. And then earlier this week, you got the audit report for fiscal 22, finally from our auditors. That will be on your agenda in August, so you have a month of delightful beachside reading time. Hope you enjoy that. It's good for a nap. So any questions I'll answer.
Different language.
It is a different language.
I did have one question. Where are we at with that wastewater spill?
That is still under investigation. Jason, so we have to test the river downstream twice. It tested clean yesterday. It will be tested again tomorrow.
Okay.
Assuming that it is still clean, the signs come out. He is working with DEQ on reporting that and working through kind of what happened, what are the corrective actions, what are the changes in procedures to make sure it doesn't happen again. So when we have information on that, we will get back to you.
But we are testing clean right now in the river.
We are testing clean right now in the river.
Good. I do want salmon.
I just noticed one thing. I have a question on here. It says 43 evaluations are past due as of 6:30. What's that really mean? Does that mean they just haven't been evaluated or they haven't got raises?
They get their raises, they haven't been evaluated. Their performance has not been evaluated.
Is there a schedule for that, or,
There is.
I mean,
And
is this like in the last year?
this would be in some cases a couple of years of people who have not gotten their evaluations done.
Couple years.
Yes.
Any other questions or comments?
Just a counselor comment, if we've moved on from the city manager's report, on the apartment complex over there by Walmart, can we make sure whatever code that we have is dedicated to bus, like large vehicle turnarounds, I assume like fire, also works for the school district? So as we build apartments, this doesn't happen again. As people come and build apartments here, we're not hearing from the school district, well, that's not wide enough. I just want to make sure that that's something staff can look at and give us an answer back
And
for future.
Ron's thrown me a thumbs up, which means we do look at that now.
Yeah.
If we can make sure we coordinate.
Yeah, I've been out there and
Okay.
you can run a school bus through it.
I'm just asking the question to make sure we
I'm
coordinate with
saying,
the school district.
been out
So
there.
they're comfortable enough with whatever it is, because,
Yeah, you can, they run the big trucks through there all the time. You can run a school bus.
okay.
I mean, it's important
That
to know
was-
we're not the block in that it is.
Yeah,
the
I just
school.
want to make sure it's not on us as more apartments come into town that, that we're not, they don't feel that we're giving them sufficient, I don't know, space for that. So that's all.
Only the cottage clusters do I worry about.
Any other items from council? Okay. Public press comments?
Bill Sullivan. 3. On this deal with the school buses, the fire department turnaround and et cetera, should have been done at the time the design of the project was started. It should already be there. It shouldn't be something that's coming up after the sheep got out.
Understood.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public or press comments? Okay, next scheduled council meeting will be August 9th, 2023. Regular session, I will be absent from that.
Dun, dun, dun.
I will be here.
So there's nothing else. We're going to adjourn the regular session. We'll reconvene at 7:05, 7:10.
Thank you.
Okay.